by starting with Tom Terry, and Tom Terry explain what his function is going to be at this going through the tabs. Okay.
Okay. Just for the new folks who have not been through this process before, we're going to go tab by tab to make sure that we have and understand the information that's there. There may be at some points. There may be some points where we will, as a board, vote up or down on certain things. In the end of tomorrow, our objective is to be able to provide Bob with guidance, an interim set of guidance that says go change this or that before this draft budget is presented to the public. We don't officially vote on the budget as we walk through, but understand our objective here is to make sure we can supply him with keep the IT person, don't keep the IT person, whatever discussion, so that when the public sees it, we have had a chance to go through all the tabs, ask the questions we want to ask, but we will move and close tabs out if there are things that we have to decide on whether we want to have a change made for the presentation on Saturday. We will be making those decisions. The implication of that is that that's a change that we're going to permanently put in place. We are not voting on the total budget today, just so everybody understands. So our process and our objective between today and tomorrow is to make sure everybody understands the tabs, what's in it, and provide any guidance to Bob and Art for changes we want to have made before it's presented to the public on Saturday. Then we get their feedback, and my guess is we will, at that point, that work whatever needs to happen at that point on specific topics that we need to meet and talk about, get more information or whatever. So just understand if we take a vote on something today, it is not the vote on the total budget. The objective is to provide guidance for Saturday so that he can make those changes. Okay? Yeah. With that in mind.
Everybody understands? Any questions?
Yeah. Okay, so today, I don't like to characterize them as cosmetic, but I mean, we're talking about things in here that we think perhaps should not be in here, and we all agree on that. And so the IT is perhaps a good example. But on the other hand, if we take a vote and say, let's leave the IT in, that means nothing as far as what the final vote might, because you might back make another case and say, look, unless we see all of this, then, I mean, it's not the final vote, it's just to clean up, do a little cleanup before Bob gives his...
At the end of the day, this is my 6th time through this, at the end of the day, I can assure you, you're not going to get everything you want in the budget, and you're not going to lose every argument. It just doesn't work that way. In the end, it's a vote for the whole thing, but Dave's comment is correct. We're not locking ourselves into anything here except for the changes that Bob needs to make for what's being presented to the public. Yeah. And I have to take this call. That's my dog. It's your dog.
Okay, my done. Forget everything he said.
Oh, good. Hey, it's exciting. Hey, this is exciting. I just want a trip to NASA.
Good for you, Tom. When do you leave?
Yeah, right now. Let's walk him out of the car.
Yeah, I think one of the things, that I'll mention this to Josh while he's right here. So that if somehow or another one of us says that it looks like assessment is going to go up, that's not a board opinion. That's an individual opinion, and probably an inappropriate print in the press individual opinion, because no matter how you cut it, if you're reading that article, you're going to think that. And you could be very disappointed or very pleased, but it means nothing. Shouldn't appear, okay? So I guess I want to make that clear. Not until we get to the end. Not at the final.
Good.
and they did open the doors and the heat's up low, so hopefully it'll get lost. Everybody hunkering down. So. Again, we're saving money. Saving money.
Making the budget.
Okay, we're going to go through the tabs. What I'll do is give you the highlights I've provided here, just like we did with BNF. And then if there's other questions, concerns, obviously we'll hit those. So first tab was just administrative. This was just just an overview for you. But the administrative tab is where we did include the IT position for this upcoming year. We do recognize, and to Tom Herrick's point, it is our intent to fill the position in this coming budget. And then this is also currently where we have the computer infrastructure upgrades. We don't, a lot will be, the final cost on those, keep in mind when we approve something like this in the budget, it's an item that we don't know what the final cost will be, certainly not with IT, because a lot of it will be dependent on hosted solution versus whether it's something we do through the cloud. Very different approaches. And there's some key advantages to each, and that'll obviously be something we'll bring back to the board for discussion and understanding. And it's a big project, so we'll work together as we start making those recommendations. Also, I want to point out in on page 5 under tab 2, you'll see it says computer and phone system. The reason our phone system is not only antiquated, but we're starting to get to the point where we can't get the parts for it. And the last time the Avaya guy was in helping us with it, he actually grabbed me in the lobby and said, "Look, I'm done. Don't ask me for any more parts. I've taken them from every other place I could ever find them. If you have another major breakdown, you're on your own." So I share that with you because he's been working with us for a while to keep our system. When you do a computer system, a lot of times the new phone systems are tied into it together. It's voice over internet capability, and so we've just labeled them both in there because it will be something we'll be looking at from a capacity issue at the time.
Bob, one of the questions that came up during the break is that you have IT under this tab, and then there are individual computers listed under. So if you could just dynamically explain how all that fits together.
Sure. Phonetically. Well, what we try to do with the actual hardware or the computers themselves, we allocate them to the department, so we know where the expense in that department or under that particular tab. This, because it's holistic, kept it under admin for now, because this is a whole. It's like putting a new building in. This is a major upgrade to our system, so we've treated this independently for tracking purposes for the initial installation. But the computers themselves, the actual hardware components, as we've been in the past, when we buy them in different areas, this allows us to track it for the expense per the department. Does that help?
Yeah. All right. Are there any changes to this tab that we want to make for the presentation to the membership?
Okay, tab
Not hearing
3.
any, move on.
Tab 3. Again, I'm going to give you a high level on each of these. Obviously, I am. No significant change. You'll find the primary thing will focus on payroll, contract supplies, until we get to some of the other areas where you're going to have membership rates. So no significant changes in the payroll component, and there were no significant changes in the contractor supplies under this particular tab.
This is manager, right?
Yes. Tab 3.
Again, before we move to another tab, I was wondering, are there any changes we want to make?
I have to ask a question, I guess, because in the BNF recommendation, they highlighted certain things that impacts payroll and benefits. That's all. Excuse me. But each individual department now, that's going to be an element. So I don't know how we can say, are you okay with that tab if we do have a general concern overall, can't break it down at this point, tab by tab. So it would be inappropriate, I think, to say, I don't have any problem with this tab or one of the other tabs through them if I had a concern like BNF did.
I do,
dilemma?
and to answer that, benefits was their area of concern, the 36% versus 31%. So if we look at benefits as a package, healthcare is one of the primary drivers of that. Every year we analyze that. We go through a lot of different components to analyze, is it the best program we have to offer? Obviously, if we make a change to that, it will impact every tab or every employee that receives health care. So it would have a overall impact on the budget holistically, which would change all the percentages for each employee if we make a change in the health care, the provider or type of health care offering we're going to provide this year. So it would be across the board. You wouldn't have to individually do it because we would do it because the changes would impact everybody.
I understand. But what I'm saying is, when you're saying, do you have any issues with that tab? Well, ultimately, that could affect that. So I'm not really saying, yeah, I'm okay with it, because there might be something at the end, we'll say, that would impact every single tab. So I'll say that as well. I'd like to reserve my objection to that for later.
No, it's good.
Well, as Bob just said, there are some overarching things like benefits that the Budget and Finance Committee, if you look at their 36 versus 31%, that kind of thing. We can certainly come back. The question at the end of the day becomes, is there something that we want to say, go back and resubmit what these numbers are for benefits? I mean, that really becomes the question.
But Bob explained every year that we have folks that look into it for the best package. Their recommendation was a thorough analysis of our benefit policy should be undertaken in the coming year.
Correct.
Industry standards and benchmarks, as well as consultants, should be employed as needed. Right. So I don't know that we have the ability to affect this budget.
If I can, as a practical matter, I think our objective here is to say anything that we should look at any might change for Bob's salary. And I don't think there's anything that we can say relevant to that. It's going to change that brief. I mean, maybe there is, but I can't imagine. Could write a change in, would say something that would change.
Well, essentially, I've been benefits for essentially the only change you can really make some keep the same benefit plan, increase the employee contribution. That's not what we do. Simply look at it and say, this is what we're spending on the plan. However, employees are making between 20%, 15%. We're going to up that to 25%. That changes the dynamic.
Excuse me, but if we do that, we won't do it today or
No.
tomorrow. We will do
I'm
it.
saying in the future.
We'll do it maybe later.
No, in the future. That's what I said. I said that.
But I mean, that's my point,
Yeah.
Pat. When I say I'm okay with benefits, pay, whatever on these tabs, if we deal with it on a macro level later,
Right.
then me saying, oh, well, I'm okay with it here isn't necessary. I mean, that would be in contradiction
That
to
would
what
be
we
correct.
might.
Now, all right, let me make sure we're clear, because healthcare is where it's going, what we're talking
That's
about
where the
in
money
general. So, B&F committee their recommendation is to do a review on that. We do a thorough review every February, March timeframe. To Dave's point, we won't make any changes before Saturday, but realistically, unless we're going to be hard pressed because we don't actually wrap up the healthcare analysis until the March timeframe, which is typically after the budget's approved, because there's a lot of analysis that's got to go into that each year. So it's probably not going to have an impact on this budget. To what Bill said earlier, they'd recommended looking at that overall in this coming year. So I don't think, unless you all understand differently, I just don't see healthcare benefit package changing to have an immediate impact for the final board approval on the budget, because it doesn't typically get fully analyzed until after this budget's done.
Well, let me ask you a specific question. Suppose, in the wisdom of this board, it's decided that perhaps the IT, the methodology in handling the IT challenge that we have in front of us is not to hire a human being or a person with their benefits, but to look for an outside consultancy. In that regard, wouldn't it change these wouldn't it have an impact on these numbers at the macro level when we get down to that particular function?
It certainly could, but that's different than benefits.
No,
The healthcare
when
benefits.
you say X number of dollars for an employee, new hire,
Yes.
don't you include the benefits?
We do, but when you say macro level, you asked me at a macro level,
Yeah.
the overall impact of the budget with our healthcare, that's a huge component. One person is not a huge component. So
Well,
if
that's-
you're talking at the macro level, no, there's little impact
Okay.
overall.
There
At
will
the
be an
micro
impact.
level,
It's just a minor impact.
comparatively, if
Yeah,
you're in
comparatively.
comparison, healthcare as a whole versus an individual employee, yes, sir, it's just so much of a gap there. So
And you know, in any new hire,
Yes.
it would have an impact on these numbers, correct? Payroll as well as health.
yes, sir.
Well, the bottom line is the Budget and Finance Committee has again suggested that there be an undertaking in this coming year. They suggested it last fall. The board rejected it, to do an independent study of salaries, wages, benefits, and everything for our organization. Either voted or by consensus, I forget whether there was an official vote or not, to not do that. The Budget and Finance Committee has reinserted that, saying again, this coming year, and it would be used for next year's budget process to do that study and make sure that I have the other way of looking at it again. When you're sitting there at 36% and the average is 31.5, I'm not even sure what that means.
I'm not even
sure what that means, because when you're an average of 31.5, that means somebody's at 16 or something and other people are at 60. I mean,
Right.
I don't even know what the comparison even means, which is again the reason that I support the idea of having that. Now then, if we want to make the decision to pay for that consultancy this coming year, then this board would have to insert that into this budget.
correct.
And this would be the correct place to put it.
Right. This would be the place to
Correct.
put it.
Right.
So at this point, if we want to do that, then at least for the interim walk-around number that's presented on Saturday, I would suggest we put in, you tell me, what are we looking at price-wise to do that kind of review? 20 grand?
Well,
25?
probably 80 grand. You're talking about some normally charges that kind of caliber is about $2,000 now. $2,000.
$2,000 an
hour?
$200 an
I
hour.
was going to say 200. 2,000, I'm going into
Wait a
that.
minute, are we?
Sorry, I used
You need to understand what you're asking. So
Well, I'm just trying to get a sense that if in fact this board thinks that the suggestion of the Budget and Finance Committee that maybe we ought to act on that, that's not in your budget.
But my question, so you're saying for a salary study?
Yeah, salary and benefit study. Yeah, what would those things cost? Well, that's what I said was 20 grand.
Maybe.
Yes, 20 grand?
I don't know.
So for the working number, I would suggest,
Same $200.
I'm going to suggest we put 20 grand
Make that
into this
discount.
budget for that study. We're not committing to spend the money, but we're just saying if we're going to go to the public and we really think this might happen, we ought to have that in there.
I would, if that's not a formal motion, but, I would suggest that we consider doing that, but not today. That leave it as is for the Saturday brief, but that anyone, Tom, actually, wants to make that suggestion, write it out, say, okay, here's exactly how much and why I want to do it, and then we take it up when we get to our budget deliberations.
Which is
That way,
So you would
it's
change it
effective.
on Saturday.
But aren't these the budget?
Well, that's really what this is. This is the budget.
Just so I understand.
That's my sense, Dave. That's what I'm getting.
well,
There are hard decisions.
Here
being made
again.
here.
and I thought we went through this at the beginning. I thought doing is first of all, getting information, get Bob's presentation. That's what it is. His presentation. But that we were not making any up and down decisions on what on the budget as a whole or what we were doing. And in fact, we were basically making changes that he could implement, that we all agreed on, that he could implement on Saturday. But it was, and I don't think this is one of them. I think it requires more discussion. And by the way, this is a little compared to some of the others that we're going to have. I don't think this is the budget discussion. We're in January. We're going to have additional meetings in February to do this.
Okay, we could debate this all day. Bottom line is, this is a procedural question. If in fact we think there's a 51% chance that we will in fact insert this in the budget at some point before we vote on the whole budget, then I suggest we add it into the amount for Saturday so that our members, when it's presented on Saturday, get the scenario that has that cost in it, as opposed to saying don't put it in because we don't have all the information yet.
Is that going to be your position on any change to that?
Possibly, depending on the situation. Some of the stuff we have information on, some we don't. So for me, I think we ought to put it in there. And it doesn't, I mean, it basically says, if you don't end up spending it, you didn't. But if there's a likelihood you will, we ought to have it in there on Saturday so that it's presented.
Now, just for clarification, and
Please.
you all can tell me otherwise, my understanding is when the presentation is made to the membership, Saturday, whatever date it is, right now we have a Saturday scheduled, we're presenting the actual budget to the membership. But
You're right. I'm with you.
that's my
That's correct.
understanding. So, means
I'm
the
on your
decisions-
wavelength.
Right.
So the decisions need to be made, so we include it in the budget, so we present them as realistic a budget. With the understanding, there may be some slight modifications, but there shouldn't be any major ones. Or, I mean, that's what the presentation's for, so our membership knows what is made. It's a presentation to them, so they understand what the board is contemplating approving for the budget for the year. If there's going to be a lot of modifications to it, why would we give them a presentation? And I think it's different than what the intent of the presentation is.
Again, I think the issue becomes if it's a 51% chance that it may happen, the membership has a right to know that's where things are leaning. It's not the final vote on things, but it needs to be in there.
Wait, I don't understand this process. Why are you presenting it to them when we know there's
Possibility.
a likelihood, I'm hearing, that there's going to be changes and perhaps some of them might be significant? I mean,
Very
it seems
significant.
like it's too early to be
Well-
presenting it to the general public and saying, this is our budget, take into consideration what Davis said. Well, there might be more study about something that comes up as we're going through this on these 2 days. It just seems like
If you wait until
we're moving too quickly on something that because we've set this arbitrary date of when we're going to present it to the public.
it's not arbitrary because the bottom line is they have a right to have input on what the budget ought to be for next year too. And if you wait until we have debated everything and finished everything, and in essence voted on it, and then present it, you get no input from the public at all.
That's true.
I'm not saying
Okay,
you wait
so
till the
that's
end of the
why you do
process,
it
but-
now, with the understanding that things can evolve afterwards.
Well,
But they
with
may
the
have some
understanding
interests.
that they can, and it should be made very clear that they are very likely to have substantial changes. But on the other hand, it gives them the same opportunity as we to recommend what those changes will be before we do it. We have to have another session after this, and as my recollection is, we've always done this. When do we do it? When's the bylaws?
Well, by middle of March, but we were if we're going to do that again, let us know. We have to change. We were 2.5 to 3 weeks longer last year than we've been ever, as far as we're concerned. It backed everything up from the membership side to the billing side. We created some interesting dynamics that had never created before by waiting that long to approve the budget. We got right down to wire lag. So if we're going to do that, we need to make our membership where a lot of we're very, very fortunate as an organization that just about 50% of our members pay their assessment before it even comes due. There were some issues that created the billing process, the mailing process. And I'm not trying to force you all to race through it, not at all my intention. But if we're changing it to do it like we did last year was the longest budget process we'd ever been through. Any of us could remember going through it. It dragged on and debated on until the very final, and it was contested. So the budget schedule to include the presentation of membership, the whole reason for the presentations, Jim, general overview, here's what it is. Any changes would be minor at that point, not major or significant changes, because then you're changing the bottom line. So you all have to make that decision, not me, but the intent is to present them in general the final budget numbers so they understand. If we're going to have significant minor changes, I don't think you all get any blowback whatsoever, but if you're making major changes and not presenting that, I think that creates an issue.
Then that means that what Tom is suggesting is appropriate to be done as we go through this today and tomorrow, as opposed to what Dave.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, and and we have 7 weeks until we have to do it, notwithstanding the difficulties of doing the last minute polls. We still have 7 weeks, and to suggest that we're going to make major decisions regarding the budget today, I think, is inappropriate. I don't think it's necessary either. If we come in, let's just take an example, if you have a $22 increase and it comes out to be a $50 increase after we finish with it, so be it.
$50 decrease.
If it's a $50 decrease, so be it. More like $50 decrease, so be it. I mean, we need to spend the time there are not only points of budgeting. I mean, it's not like going through each tab and saying, oh yeah, well, we don't need this person, or we should use the amount of this person, or don't. It's more than, there are some fundamental issues they have decided, and they can have a major budget, and if it suggests that we'll do it in these 2 days, it's just ludicrous. And then we have 7 weeks just to.
Can somebody explain to me, you talked about the MACO,
Yes, sir.
and we go to an outside benefits person
Yes, sir.
that does all this, comparisons and all that. What is $20,000? What else is that going to get me?
I'm sorry, what?
What else is $20,000 going to get me? What other than the MACO and the other, employee studies, salary studies, and the benefit studies done by our outside firm that does all our, the benefits, this one is better there, and all that. What's $20,000 going to get me?
Well, maybe the person suggests what Pat mentioned as a possibility. Maybe what's trending overall to control your costs is that you ask for, many cities and municipalities do now, greater employee contribution toward the cost of their benefits, because your personnel costs, salary and benefits, are the biggest part of what you're paying.
Right, but this benefits person doesn't get involved in that.
They get involved in plan design. Plan design, part of plan design is the actual plan itself. In other words, through the account for
Yeah, I get all that.
prenatal and all that kind of stuff. The other part of it is who pays for it.
Right.
You pay for it, you pay 80%, you pay 75%, do you increase your co-pays up to $1,000 a year? All those kinds of factors have to be added in to find out what the final cost is. And that changed. We have an excellent plan. I've seen it before, Bob. But there are changes that can be made, and that's what you can do. Employees don't like it. They also want benefits.
Okay, let me make a recommendation at this point before we even think about modifying any of that. Okay, the employee benefits package is one component of how employees is compensated to work. You have to look at their salaries along with the package to get the whole understanding of what it takes for an employee to be working, what their take home, what their benefits. Our package is slightly stronger on the healthcare benefits, but our salaries are weak. It's always been that. So it's a balance. So you've got to be careful. You can't just say we're going to look at this. I'm just telling you, it's a bigger perspective than what we realize.
Yeah, and that's what this kind of person should be giving you guidance on, because maybe they say it's better in the long run to raise their salaries and change their benefits somewhat. It is a balance.
I understand that. I look at it every year in great detail, so I understand. What I would recommend, just as an FYI, not for any other thing that's convenient for you all, the food's been sitting out for 10 minutes. It's a little chilly in here, so whatever's hot is going to get cool, and then the lunch won't be as good for you. How about, if it's okay, we go ahead and get lunch, and then also think about what the process should look like. I thought we were clear on the process, for Saturday, but if that's changed, you need to agree so we know how to react. So if it's okay, can we do lunch?
I'm talking about a whole.
But
It was clear to all of us.
that's what I thought.
Necessary change.
But lunch.